Artificial intelligence is about to destroy social media. Finally.
It was an ordinary Saturday afternoon. The kids were beating each other up. My wife was thinking up jobs for me. And me, I was hiding in my studio in order to work.
What Trump just did wasn't a simple power play. It was a political earthquake.
AI tweets. Seriously?
Elon Musk has rewritten the rules of the internet. The result? Not just another AI model.
It seemed to me that something was rotten in the state of X. Surely people had to notice. So I took a look at the comments.
As the author of this insightful piece so rightly points out, we are standing at the threshold of a fundamental transformation of the way we work.
Wherever I looked, it followed me. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, of course, but I never looked there anyway. Simple posts by simple people, padded out by AI, only to be commented on by AI. What was going on? I had to flee to the one platform that still valued the voice of an author, Substack.
In 1967, fewer than 5% of Japanese brides wore a diamond. The ritual was 1,000 years old, sealed with a shared cup of rice wine. No proposal, no ring. Within a single generation, more than 60% of Japanese brides wore a diamond ring, and Japan had become the second largest diamond market on earth. 14 years of advertising and 1,000 years of tradition had been rewritten.
That was too much of a good thing. The 16,000-word essay in AI speak had everything suddenly turned into AI. I had to know, or rather, I had Pangram tokens, so I already knew. So let us dive deep together into this complex topic and find out at the bottom.
Come on, not you as well. The internet is choking on its own garbage already. And why that may be the best thing that could happen to us. Wherever you look these days, AI is everywhere. Not in the form the snake oil salesman of big tech, your Sam Altmans and Elon Musks, promised us, because limitless abundance is about as likely as self-driving Teslas within the next year. It turns up instead in precisely those places where supposedly ordinary people come together to talk to one another. Several studies now confirm what anyone with a bit of an ear for language had long since noticed. The social networks are being overrun by AI content. And not only by companies and operators, but by ordinary users who have outsourced their urge to tell the world something to a machine. All of a sudden, Gary from the gas station and Madison from the social media department turn up with page-long geopolitical takes that hardly anyone would have credited them with. And of course, a quick AI check promptly confirms that they did not, in fact, take a secret evening class on the significance of Shia Islam in Iran, but simply handed the job to ChatGPT or Claude. None of this is imagination. Studies from recent years show that between 40 and 50% of posts on platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, and X are now AI-generated, or at least AI-assisted. And the trend is rising sharply. On Facebook, the share already stood at just under 5% before 2022, the year ChatGPT appeared. By 2023, it had climbed to 24%, and by the end of 2024 to a staggering 41%. X looks much the same. An analysis by the AI detector Pangram in June 2026 found that 23.9% of longer texts were fully AI-generated, and a further 22.9% partly so. Taken together, that is almost half of all longer statements. And we are not talking about funny pictures or AI videos here, but about text, the things people use to tell the world who they are. And LinkedIn once again confirms its reputation as the most soulless platform of them all. According to Pangram, 41% of long-form posts there are AI generated and 30% of short ones. The joke about bots feeling most at home on that particular platform writes itself. But fine, we all know these networks have their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities. Facebook is dead, or rather populated entirely by boomers. X is a political gladiator pit, and LinkedIn, well, we have covered that. And yes, bear with me a moment longer. I will get to why all this is supposed to be a good thing. But first, a quick look at Substack. Yes, Substack. The place where I hopefully pitched my tent at the beginning of the year with my media project Leo. The place that set out to be a counterpoint to the noise of the fast-moving internet. A place where authors and their individual voices are valued, where independent voices can find an audience in a respectful atmosphere, far from the shouting of Twitter and TikTok. Well, according to the Pangram study from the end of June 2026, a full 21.9%, almost a quarter of all posts, which is what Substack calls its long articles, were AI generated or AI assisted. That, incidentally, is an average. In some niches, business for example, and LinkedIn sends its regards, the share was considerably higher. And yes, that is markedly lower than on the other social networks. But precisely where there ought to be a refuge for human authors, it is alarming. So, is Substack turning into Slopstack? Anyone who looks around the platform for a while will struggle to stay optimistic. What began as an alternative to the classic social networks has changed drastically. Reach is long since distributed in much the same way through an in-house feed of short messages called Notes, which differs from X in its workings only in that it is more respectable to share daily motivational quotations from Chesterton and Tolkien, along with messages like "Reject the man cave, embrace the study," set against pictures of wood-paneled libraries, than to post cheeky lines about Donald Trump and the Europoors. Honesty compels me to add that we at Leo have had to play this game as well, which is why we have someone assigned to social media. Because whoever does not play simply is not seen. I know excellent writers who find no audience on Substack, even though they publish gripping and entertaining pieces in a clear, authorial voice. They just do not play the visibility game. And into this situation, over the past few months, have stepped the grifters. Forgive me, there is no other word for it, who saw in the combination of Substack and AI a way to churn out and at some point monetize supposedly deeply researched analysis on an assembly line. Single accounts with no named author publishing 4 times a week or more often, essays well over 10,000 words with nearly 100 footnotes on the most varied historical subjects, until you find yourself asking how that could be humanly possible. And around whom, incidentally, it has gone remarkably quiet since the beginning of July, shortly after the Pangram study was published. Because anyone who feeds these deep dives, so popular on Substack, into Pangram gets the answer he had long suspected. In all likelihood, these are texts that are close to 100% AI generated. And anyone with experience of AI knew it after a single paragraph. Now, a little over a week ago, Substack introduced an option that lets authors release their articles for a Pangram check directly on the platform. Congratulations, sincerely. Substack is the first platform to recognize that its entire raison d'être is in danger if nothing is done about this abuse of AI. That, however, did not meet with applause alone. Some authors now suspect the witch hunt against anyone who happens to write too smoothly. From the experience of an editor, though, I can say that with our text at Leo, I have never once come across such a misjudgment, even though some of them were translated from another language with the help of AI, and all of them are polished editorially. Texts where my own linguistic instinct sounds the alarm almost always turn out to be 100% AI generated or AI assisted. Genuine texts are recognized as human with almost the same reliability. Even translation into English does no more than downgrade Pangram's confidence in human authorship from high to medium. Let's be clear. Not everyone who fears a witch hunt is an AI author, but human authors have to support this kind of scrutiny, because on their own, as we are now seeing, they cannot hold out against the interplay of an algorithm with AI-generated and optimized texts, which are sometimes even boosted by entire networks of AI accounts. Yes, that too can already be observed. But, and this was the question we started with, what is good about any of this? Well, the original question still stands. Why does Sequoia from the hair salon now have ChatGPT write her views on immigration policy? That has to do with the nature of social media. Those of us who are older will still remember what the internet looked like before the rise of the social networks. There were websites for every conceivable interest group where people came together in forums. It was not perfect, but it worked. And hierarchies of competence formed. Someone who knew a great deal about trimming hedges was a welcome voice in the gardening forums. A mechanic who restored classic cars in his spare time became a legend on the classic car forum, and so on and so forth. Then came social media, and everything shifted onto a handful of centralized platforms, which were soon so crowded that it fell to the algorithms to sort out who got to see what. On paper, it sounded wonderful. Whoever knows a lot about cars gets shown to car enthusiasts. But that is not how algorithms work. They do not judge the substance of a contribution, only how strongly it feeds the parameters that govern visibility. What rose to the top were not the most competent voices, but the loudest and the most addictive. At the same time, the emotional dependency grew. More and more social contact ran through the networks rather than through meeting in the real world. Social validation came in the form of likes instead of time spent together. All of this is well known. But it is worth calling to mind when we ask ourselves how it came about that ordinary people like you and me outsourced their communication with the world to a machine. The answer is simple. It is merely the last logical step in a development that has been underway for almost 20 years. Self-censorship, a curated public face, a distorted picture of reality, self-optimization for maximum visibility and popularity, all of this ruled the social networks long before the rise of AI. Authenticity had long since become a marketing term rather than the description of a fully rounded personality. Anyone who wants to be present in the marketplace of ideas, anyone who wants social validation had to act as though they were simply being himself, while the truth was often the exact opposite. No wonder people feel permanently exhausted when their daily life is lived under the constant pressure of presenting something they are not. And into this powder keg flew the spark of AI. Suddenly, you no longer had to write anything yourself in order to face the attention economy. You could have that artificial identity produced by an artificial intelligence. And the reactions it provoked were in large part already artificial anyway. I have to admit, I understand it. If I were not bound to public perception as a journalist and an artist, There's nothing I would rather do than step off this hamster wheel. By outsourcing their communication to AI, people are only exposing a broken system. The social networks are anything but social. They are a cage built by the attention economy, and most people would quietly rather escape it. The attempt to generate attention by means of AI proves that it was never about a genuine need to say something, but only about the social validation tied to the system. So, if the use of AI on the social networks leads to a crisis of confidence in this form of communication, I can only welcome it. Good riddance! Let the AIs sing each other's praises, while human beings go and do their communicating somewhere else. Will the internet, as it once was, ever be recoverable? I doubt it, because there's almost never a step backwards as such, even when it would be the simplest and the best solution. But perhaps new and alternative structures will develop, smaller, more intimate, more clearly bounded, in which real communication between real people can flourish again, without likes, without the artificial dopamine rush, without mechanisms of dependency. And so perhaps writers who find no audience on algorithmically optimized platforms will go back to their own blog after all, a place you drop by every now and then, the way you do with an old friend, and where you're glad when there's something new to read, only there and guaranteed human. Is that too idealistic? Or am I too radical in my dismissal? Let me know in the comments, and I shall go and see whether I can still track down my old passwords from the forum days. I'll see you there. Yours, David Bos.
The elephant in the room.
Here's what
that
almost
nobody is
everyone
talking about.
Really
This is an
insightful
inflection
It's
point.
important to understand that this development is
Here's what almost
This is
everyone
It's
is.
important to
This is an
understand that
inflection
this
Nobody's
development
talking
One thing
about.
is certain,
multifaceted.
nothing will ever be the same again.
Hardly.